From Montana's news leader, this is the MTN 530 News.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm Russ Riesinger. There's another surge in COVID-19 cases in Montana as we head into the weekend, with the largest majority of them again coming from right here in Yellowstone County. Today, there's another 142 new cases reported across the state. Yellowstone County has 51 new cases, bringing our county's overall number of active cases to 677. Statewide, the total more than 6,200. There was one more death reported today in Missoula County. That's the 90th so far in the state. Well, the call to go ahead with sports this fall in Yellowstone County, but without fans in the stands, has brought both cheers and jeers. County Health Officer John Felton will give the public a chance to ask questions about the fan ban in a virtual meeting that will be held on Facebook Live Monday. This week, Felton announced the sports policy for high school and middle schools in the county. Athletics will go on for students with precautions and checks in place, but parents and others will not be allowed to see it in person. Felton said in a news release that he wants to be able to address these concerns while helping the public understand the decision-making process and the considerations that went into that plan. The Facebook Live Q&A session will take place from 6:30 until 7:30 Monday night. It will be broadcast live on the Q2 Facebook page where you can give your questions and comments. Felton says that he is looking forward to a respectful discussion and that questions will not be answered past 7:30. Earlier this week, we told you about a petition started by a Laurel woman on change.org asking that the policy be amended to allow limited spectators with proper social distancing. Well, I checked this afternoon. That petition now has more than 20,000 electronic signatures. You might think school choosing to start the school year with remote learning would reduce the need for short-term substitute teachers. However, in districts still opting for in-person learning, like School District 2, the need for help is in high demand. Here's MTN's Andrea Lutz with a look at how the district is trying to entice substitutes to come on board during the pandemic.
As teachers head back to the classroom this fall and as COVID-19 looms, there's a call to action by districts to get substitutes in line.
Everyone knows that schools for the past 6, 7, 8 years have had difficulties maintaining a substitute pool that's adequate for the need.
A difficulty that Superintendent of School District 2 Greg Upham is taking head on.
We want to put as much support in those classrooms as we possibly can because we know we are going to experience significant learning gaps.
That's of course if teachers experience the virus or are forced to quarantine themselves. So Upham is enticing substitutes with this, a job listing asking for help with an increase in pay. $125 for non-certified substitutes, $150 for those who are certified.
Those are certified staff that we want on hand to do a dual role, which would be to fill in as a substitute when needed, but also available for any staff member that may have to be out for an extended period of time.
But finding substitutes remains a challenge for every school in Montana. At the Lockwood School District, they plan to pay for full-time extra help with the use of CARES Act dollars.
We know that we're going to have teachers get sick, absent of the COVID. We know we're going to have maternity leaves and those type of things. And so the idea is to try and bring those people into the fold since we have those extra resources this year.
And bottom line, districts realize everything is at the mercy of the virus.
If we can keep it contained, and I've said this many times to the public, help us out. Do the face coverings, every one of us.
And Superintendent Upham also says he's checked with their substitute pools, just asked about the likelihood that folks would come back into the classroom. He said there was a low percentage of individuals who said they would not be willing to. For MTN News, I'm Andrea Lutz.
The Lockwood School Board opted to hire 3 full-time substitute teachers for the upcoming school year. Novatio says they will help quell the need to have others who may teach at multiple schools per week. Well, students and faculty at MSU Billings say it's been a smooth transition so far after 3 days of in-person classes. And while the goal of returning students to class has been met, there are some changes being made. Interim Chancellor Rolf Groseth says some professors have changed their class schedule to a hybrid platform to limit the number of students in the classroom at one time. Q2 also spoke with one MSUB student, resident assistant, who says she's happy to be back on campus.
It definitely helps being able to see someone and the way that they want something reciprocated, especially in touchy subjects with psychology that have to do with mental health, if you're learning about that, or criminal justice, stuff like that. So you see more emotion, which is really, I think, something important, especially with majors that communicate with people.
Ulmer also said that some of the main changes she's noticed in class include more space between students, smaller class sizes, and the transition of class group discussions to an online platform. Moving forward, Montana and 44 other states will be expected to pay a quarter of the state's National Guard response to the pandemic. Since March, the Montana National Guard has been activated for a federal mission to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic. That mission was fully funded by FEMA, but beginning today, the federal government wants a 25% copay. Now, earlier this week, Governor Bullock called that decision unprecedented.
All the time that they're on federal missions, that's paid 100% by the federal government. They've said that states will end up paying 25% of the cost of the National Guard, and the federal government will be picking up 75%. Unprecedented when it comes to being on Title 32 orders.
The original order from President Trump excluded Texas and Florida from having to pay the 25% copay. Arizona, California, and Connecticut were added to that list a couple of weeks ago. Connecticut only reported one more case than Montana yesterday. Republican Greg Gianforte continues to have a huge fundraising lead over Democrat Mike Cooney in Montana's race for governor. But as MTN's Mike Dennison reports, when you take out Gianforte's own substantial personal contribution, it's not quite as lopsided. Here's a closer look at where the money is coming from in the 2020 contest for governor.
Through last weekend, Greg Gianforte had raised $2.8 million from donors for his gubernatorial campaign. And Democrat Mike Cooney, he's taken in about $1.8 million. Both men are getting plenty of money from fellow Montanans. For Gianforte, it's almost 80% of his donations, $2.2 million. And for Cooney, it's around 72%, or $1.3 million. The race also is getting attention from donors across the country, for it's one of the only competitive gubernatorial races in the nation. Cooney has donors from all 50 states, and Gianforte has donors from every state except Hawaii. While Gianforte has been the fundraising leader for most of this race, Cooney actually raised more from donors than did Gianforte in the past 2 months. Cooney raised $726,000 since mid-July, while Gianforte took in about $582,000 from donors during the period. But the biggest difference in this fundraising contest, of course, is Gianforte's personal contributions. In addition to the $2.8 million he's raised from donors, Gianforte has loaned or contributed almost $2.6 million of his own money to his campaign. That pushes his overall total to $5.4 million, or 3 times what Cooney has raised. And Gianforte's campaign has already spent $5 million, including $1.5 million on media buys in the past 2 months. Reporting from Helena, Mike Dennison, MTN News.
Libertarian Lyman Bishop of Kalispell is also in that race. He's raised $17,500 for his campaign, including about $10,000 from his own pocket. Attendance and receipts at this year's Montana Fair in Billings were only about 30% of normal. That word today from Metro Park Marketing and Sales Director Ray Massey. He tells Q2 it's about what officials expected. On a positive note, Massey said holding this year's fair amid the pandemic was a psychological win that gave the community a sense of normalcy. As for the Toby Keith concert scheduled September 17th, look for an announcement on that early next week. Up next on tonight's Q2 530 News, we're going to head out onto the links where it's golfing for a great cause. We'll update you on this year's Billings Clinic Classic. And in sports, Scott guides us into the weekend with a pair of sisters who throw BMX racing into the rivalry.
And coming up in weather, still got some smoke in the skies, but we are starting to see some lighter smoke, some of the light. We're starting to see the light. We'll have the details coming up in just a few more minutes.